Weight?
3.5.
I'm Scott Weldy. I'm the veterinarian of record for the Orange County Zoo. When I first started as a veterinarian and I graduated in 1985 from UC Davis, I always had an interest in exotic animals and wildlife. I mainly did reptiles and then some birds and things like that. So when I got out of vet school, because I had emphasized medicine as my background and my basis, and then with an emphasis on exotic animals, I started helping and doing as much of the wildlife and as much of anything that anybody would give me that wasn't a domestic animal. And that initial putting my neck out, so to speak, is what I did to kind of establish myself in an area of Southern Orange County that didn't really have too many non-domestic veterinarians. And then eventually I became the backup veterinarian for the Santa Ana Zoo, which led me into the Orange County Zoo. There's a huge difference between wild animals, domestic animals, and zoo animals. In zoo animals, I have to rely on my keepers to be the eyes and ears of the animal. And those keepers are paramount in their observational skills. They have to be able to be accurate and tell me what's going on. They also have to be able to treat that animal, because a lot of these animals, after I shoot you with a dart 2 or 3 times, or I catch you up and anesthetize you, these animals aren't real happy with me. And unlike domestic dogs and cats, they're forgiving of pretty much anything you do. But the wild animals aren't always that way. And so the keepers have to have their animal trained to go into some kind of a location to be weighed, to be handled, to be injected, to receive a treat so that we can give it oral medications. And that's another thing, is how do I give them medication? If they don't eat twice a day, how do I get this medication in them? And then do I have to pull them off exhibit because they've got a bandage on their wing, or they've got a cast on their leg, or they have surgery scar, and I don't want any of the other animals in the group to rub up against them. You have to take all of this into consideration. And a wild animal, same thing. I'm going to treat him, and then I have to let him go. Another question that comes up to us is that when we get new animals, like our 2 cougars that we just acquired, they came in to us months before they were ever put on exhibit. And people were eager to have them on exhibit because they knew we had received them, but they didn't know anything about them. And no one seems to realize that these 2 animals, especially these 2 animals, came from the wild into a zoo in Oregon. Then they came down to the exotic feline breeding compound. Then they came from there into this zoo. And so you have to, every time they go in there, you have to look at them, do exams, you have to check them for fecal parasites, you have to take care of ectoparasites on them, and you have to make sure that they're clean, because they're going to come into our zoo, which is basically a sterile facility. The 2 places they went to did the exact same thing. They put them in quarantine. If you have the ability to take blood, you pull blood work on them, and you're looking for diseases on them, and you're letting them sit there. And the reason you're letting them sit there, and there's an amount of time for different types of animals, like reptiles, a lot of times we'll let them sit for 30, 60, or 90 days. Some of the mammals, they'll say 30 days. And they do that because that is the adjusted and recommended time frame that the average animal of that species is going to show up with the disease. It also gives you time to look at feeding behaviors, to train them to shift in and out, to train them to take food treats, to trust you. Because once they get on exhibit, they're on exhibit, and it's really hard to get that animal to shift off exhibit if it does not already have some established rapport with the keepers and some idea of the routine. Because they were at 2 other facilities that had their own routine. And so that's why it takes time for these animals to go through quarantine. Is we're trying to do blood work on them, and we knock them out. We're trying to make sure, like these 2, we spayed and neutered them. We had to put microchips in them, we had to vaccinate them, and we had to vaccinate them multiple times. Just like your dog or cat, you have to give them the initial vaccines and then boost them. And we had to make sure that they were perfectly healthy and clean, because once we put them on exhibit, they're going to be with all our other animals. And we have another cougar in there, and we have 2 bobcats and an ocelot, and I don't want anything from these 2 new cats to go to those guys or to one of my other animals, my bear, my dogs, whatever. It's a wonderful, passionate lifestyle and career, and we're not driven by money, we're driven by the passion for what we do. And there's nothing better than taking an animal that can't talk to you like a human and sometimes I can't even touch until after I've got it under anesthesia to examine it, and I have to figure out what I'm going to knock it out with. I want to knock it out smoothly, safely. I want to have everybody around it okay. I want to have the animal fall to the ground or go to sleep in a place that's safe for it. And then I have to figure out how am I going to treat this animal that I cannot touch necessarily. And that's the driving force. It's very rewarding when you get all of that to come together and you end up with a healthy animal that's doing well in captivity or in the wild. So it's important that we as a veterinary group and keepers and all that stuff manage these animals properly, and that's where you see a lot of the work that we're doing is just basic husbandry and management of those animals. It's not all, oh, we have to do an anesthesia to do a surgery on our goat or on our sheep or on our bear or on our horse. It's management of that animal's quality of life, because they're not allowed and not able to be a normal wild animal to take care of themselves. Plus we're trying to make sure that they live longer and healthier and happier.